Introducing YouTube memberships, a fun way to support the channel while getting some exclusive perks. Click the join button to become a member now and get benefits like badges next to your name on videos, behind-the-scenes photos, advantages during the live trivia game, discounts on merchandise, private one-on-one video chats, the ability to request future video topics, and exclusive 8 to 10 minute videos on the history of the NFL. And now, on with our feature presentation. A while ago, I did a video about this scheme right here between the Chicago Bears and the Jacksonville Jaguars. You can learn more about that game by clicking the card in the upper right corner. However, to make a long story short, the Jaguars, coming off a 2 straight wins somehow, took on the Bears. And with the Bears leading at 30-27 with no time left, the Jaguars and kicker Mike Hollis lined up for a 54-yard field goal. The kick was no good, and the Bears won by that same score. You would think that Jags fans would be upset about that, and would either be silent and dejected, or maybe even boo their own kicker. Not that they would probably do that, but in all likelihood, they leave with their heads down and quiet. Instead, they do something almost unthinkable. They cheer their own team. Despite the fact that they just lost the game, they decide to cheer the Jaguars for the hard-fought game, and decide to give the team a standing ovation for a heck of a game. A situation like that is truly bizarre. It's a once-in-a-blue-moon kind of thing. It happened in that game in 1995. It happened during the wild-card round of the 1987 playoffs, when Saints fans gave a standing ovation after losing to the Vikings for the great season, and for making it to the playoffs for the first time ever, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And it happened in the game that we're talking about today. Because during this game right here, a battle toward the end of the 1974 season between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New England Patriots, Patriot fans decided to do something unthinkable. And I don't mean just give their team a standing ovation. No, they treated this bad boy like they just won the AFC Championship and were going to the Super Bowl. Because this is the story behind what might just be, considering the circumstances, in the over 60-year history of the Patriots franchise, one of the craziest fan moments ever. Before I talk about the actual moment itself, we need some context to understand how the game was going, and how the season was going for New England. It's December 8th, 1974. It's week 13 of the NFL season. As we're winding down and going down the home stretch, we have a big game on our hands in the AFC between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New England Patriots. For the Steelers, this game is a really big deal. They entered this one at 8-3-1, leading the AFC Central by a game and a half over the 7-5 Cincinnati Bengals. So if they win this game, then they would win the division and would advance to the playoffs for the 3rd straight season. However, for the main team in our story, this game is just as big, if not bigger. For the Patriots, they entered this game at 7-5, 2 games back of the AFC East, and 2 games back of the wildcard spot. Now, there's both good and bad news for the Patriots as they enter this one. Here's the good news. This season has been unbelievable for them. The fact that this team is still alive and is in the playoff picture at 7-5 through 12 weeks is remarkable. This is a Pats team that has not had a winning record since the 1966 season, when they went 8-4-2 in the first season in the Super Bowl era. This is a Pats team that has also not made it to the postseason since the 1963 season, when they made it to the AFL Championship more than a decade ago. This is a Pats team that entering this season since October of 1968 had spent a grand total of 3 weeks above 500, and hadn't been more than a game above 500 since that 1966 season. Even though the Pats have been struggling a bit as of late, this was a Pats team that had one of the best offenses in football, as through 12 weeks, they had scored 304 points, or over 25 points per game. The only team ahead of them was the Oakland Raiders. The fact that not only were the Patriots in the hunt, but were an exciting team to watch, especially after not having an offense rank inside the top half of the league since 1964, is remarkable. Now here's the bad news. A 7-5 record still puts you in a pretty big hole in order to make the playoffs. The Patriots started the season 5-0, but a rough 2-5 stretch in their last 7 games put their season in some trouble. Back in 1974, only 4 teams in each conference made it to the playoffs. So even if the Patriots won their final 2 games to end the season at 9-5, it would take a minor miracle to get into the playoffs for the first time in over a decade. The only hope for the Pats to get in would be if they went 2-0 and the 9-3 Miami Dolphins, as in the 2-time defending Super Bowl champion Miami Dolphins, and a team that had lost 5 games over the last 3 seasons combined, somehow lost 2 in a row, with one of them being their Week 14 finale against the Pats, but most importantly, the other one being against the Baltimore Colts, who were the worst team in football and ended the season at 2-12. That was probably not going to happen, so long story short, despite the great success of the Pats throughout the season, even if they somehow won the game against the Steelers, who were one of the best teams in football, their season was pretty much dead in the water. As for how this game turned out, as you can probably tell from these highlights, despite the close nature of the contest, with the Patriots even leading 7-0 at the end of the first quarter, this was just not their day. When the final whistle sounded, the Steelers won it 21-17, clinching the AFC Central and eliminating any chance that New England had at making it to the playoffs. Although considering the fact that the Dolphins also unsurprisingly won, those chances were already done regardless of the outcome of this game. The game wasn't even that close, as the Steelers had a 21-10 lead with 80 seconds left in the contest. Patriots quarterback Jim Plunkett was not protected throughout the contest, as the incredible steel curtain defense that Pittsburgh had sacked him 3 times and held him to just 105 net passing yards, along with a completion percentage of 44%. The running game for the Patriots was a strength all season. They ended the year 6th in rushing yards, 3rd in rushing touchdowns, and inside the top 10 in yards per carry. But on this day, absolutely nothing, as they picked up just 79 rushing yards on 2.4 yards per carry. You've got to play a near flawless game to beat the Steelers, and when you turn the ball over 3 times and lose the turnover battle while amassing less than 200 yards of total offense, that's not going to get it done. The Patriots' run defense had been a highlight all season, as they ended the year allowing the 4th fewest yards and the 3rd fewest yards per carry. But on this day, the incredible Franco Harris had 136 yards on nearly 4.7 yards per carry, as the Pats allowed a season-high 184 rushing yards. When the Steelers have as many rushing yards as you have total yards of offense, it's not too surprising to see why the final score was the way that it was. So that's the end of the season for New England. Sure, they have 1 game left against the Miami Dolphins on the road, but that game is meaningless outside of playing for pride. Despite exceeding expectations, and despite a 5-0 and even a 6-1 start, it was just not meant to be. The New England Patriots were 7-6, were 3 games back of a playoff spot with 1 to play, and were officially mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. And you would think that the fans would be upset about this. Maybe they wouldn't be booing or anything like that, but they would definitely be leaving the stadium disappointed, knowing that despite a great season by their standards, and despite a great start to the year, that it was all for nothing, and they'd be sitting on their couch for the playoffs, just as they had been doing for the past decade. However, they did not do that. Far from it, in fact, because the fans decided to give the team a standing ovation. You gave us hope to make the playoffs all the way until the penultimate week of the season, when we've been a laughingstock for years. You took it to the Steelers, and actually made it a pretty decent game, even though the Steelers were in control for most of it. Yeah, we'll cheer you off the field for the incredible job and joy you've given us this season. It's about the journey, not the destination. There's even a radio recording of the game that is surviving where you can hear some applause, even though a lot of crowd noise was not able to be picked up by that. But they didn't just cheer the Pats. Oh no. They wanted to thank their team so much that they quite literally stormed the field as a sign of appreciation. While there are no television broadcasts of the game itself that are surviving, which is not too surprising, seeing as trying to find any broadcast footage from the first half of the 1970s for a non-playoff game is like trying to find a needle in a haystack the size of Boston, you can actually see it as the Steelers are leaving the field. Those people rushing onto the field aren't team members, or personnel, or security guards, or anything like that. They're fans. They're regular people just like you and me. They're actual fans storming the field after a loss to try and congratulate their team on what had been a heck of a season. Said one report from the game, the crowd was appreciative. The fans wandered all over the field and left finally after being asked to. They just wanted to be closer to what had been such an interesting dream. Side note, I love how the author of this article, Milton Cole of the Daily Hampshire Gazette, used the word wandered here. To wander is to go somewhere and have no idea where you're going. No, they stormed the field. You don't just go from the stands and wander aimlessly onto the field. That's not how this works. Having said that, after the game, even players on both teams commented on the bizarre nature of the Patriots fans not just cheering on their team after a loss, but even so much as storming the field to congratulate them. You don't see field stormings in the NFL every day, let alone after a loss. Said Steelers running back Rocky Bleier, that was really something. The game is lost, and they still gave their team a standing ovation. I guess they appreciated the way these guys had played hard all year. But most importantly for the Patriots, the fans gained the respect of linebacker Steve King. Even despite the solid season, Schaefer Stadium wasn't sold out for most of the year. There were multiple times during the season where the attendance in the stadium was less than 60,000, and the game was blacked out. Heck, players on the team were upset at the fans throughout the season. During their last home game back on November 17th, a 21-16 loss to the New York Jets, running back Mac Herron criticized the fanbase, saying, "The fans sit there like a bunch of mummies when things ain't happening good. We need some support, and the emotion can't come from the bench. It's gotta come from up there. The fans want everything, but don't want to give anything." But if there was any doubt about the passion and loyalty of Patriots fans, King made it very clear that with how they reacted after the Pittsburgh game, that they earned his respect. Said King, "That was nice. During the season, sometimes, I didn't think there was enough noise from the crowd, but that was good what they did at the end today." A Patriots crowd that was criticized all season ended up getting an apology of sorts, and all it took was a standing ovation after a loss and a field storming to do it. As for what happened afterwards in the game between these two teams behind me right here, well, for the Patriots, they would lose to the Miami Dolphins on the final week of the season, and would drop to 7-7. So they were still in search of their first winning record since 1966, and wouldn't get it until 1976, 2 years later, when they won the AFC East. As for the Pittsburgh Steelers, the team that won this game, well, they would go on to win Super Bowl IX over the Minnesota Vikings, in a game that you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. That game would kickstart Pittsburgh's dynasty in the 1970s, one of the greatest dynasties in American football history. I think it's safe to say that the game against the Patriots was definitely a sign of things to come for them going forward the rest of the season. The idea of cheering after a loss to some may seem bizarre. It's the idea of what we just saw and paid money for was irrelevant, because you guys brought us enough joy and hope over the last few weeks, and even the last few months, that it was worth it. But while we've seen some examples like this over the years, like the Jaguars in 1995 and the Saints in 1987, I'm not sure we've ever seen anything quite like this, where a field storming, or should I say, a field wandering, was involved. I wonder what those Patriot fans would think if 30 to 40 years later, they knew that they'd built one of the greatest dynasties in the history of not just the NFL, but American sports. But on this day in 1974, after a heartbreaking loss to what started off as such a promising season, the Patriots fans told their team that just because you lost doesn't mean you're losers. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.